Hey, what's up, TikTok? Let's have a quick conversation about this. She says, we're not discussing the real reason why other cultures of women get married young and why they last. Our men are different. Yes, the men are very different. Our men bought into supporting feminism. And so when you guys started calling yourself goddesses and queens and saying that you're single and independent and you don't need a man, the guys up front, there were more men who signed on and was like, yes, female empowerment. And they went along with that shit. The other culture shot that shit down right away. Arab, Asian, Indian, they're like, yeah, get that shit out of here. We're not going with it. So because the other culture shot that down, they maintained patriarchy. And because their cultures were still dominated, led by their men, the women continued to marry men that their fathers picked. And so that's really important. I'm going to tell you why that's really important. Because women don't choose men based off their character. And the character is what's going to determine how well he does in life, what his long-term values are, and most likely how those things are going to manifest. And so women choose, like based off of the same types of, shit that men choose. Based on, is he tall enough? Is he handsome? Does he know how to create a vibe? How does he make me feel? Women are very, very feeling based. You guys are not very pragmatic. I don't know if you've been online long enough to recognize that, but you ladies are not very practical or pragmatic. Your thinking and the way you even have conversations is completely ruled by your emotions and feelings. And that's obvious to men. It's obvious to us. You guys talk all this emotional intelligence stuff. Meanwhile, getting triggered by what types of words people use when they speak to you and then not being able to keep up with most of the points. So instead, because you can't maintain attention long enough on what's being said to respond to it, you end up making up a different point of, your own loosely based off of things that the guy said while he was talking. You guys have a difficult time maintaining attention. It's like crazy because you can do well in college, you can do well at a job, but then when it comes to the realm of relationship where your feelings matter, boom, all that logic, reason, rationale, and intellectual ability goes right out the fucking window. So that's why your fathers always picked your husbands. Now, the way that Western marriages characterized picking, arranged marriages is somebody marrying off to a woman for her family, to make her family wealthy or to close some type of business deal or some kingdom. But that's 1% of 1% of 1% of people. The average people are average. And so when fathers were arranging a marriage of their daughter to a plumber or somebody who had a bachelor's degree in accounting, they weren't trying to merge families so that they can create some type of dynasty. They were just trying to pick a guy that was going to have character, morals, principles, and values, where he was going to stay with his daughter, protect and provide for his daughter, and be a good son and fit into the family. And a lot of you don't know this because you've never experienced it. But I have experienced this directly. I've got one of my closest friends that I made while I was in the service is an Indian guy. And his parents practiced arranged marriages. And him and I were so close that his parents would introduce me as a son whenever I went to any family events to them. And I saw 6, 7, 8 arranged marriages go off. And what they do, the parents would come together of the two different families, and they sit down and have tea together and they talk. And the two kids that were thinking about getting married, who weren't kids, they're in their 20s, or, the man might be in his early 30s or late 20s, and the girl was in her early 20s to mid 20s. They would go on a walk together and talk. And then when the meeting was over, the family would go and they would talk with their individual child about what they thought about the person. Did you like her? Was she pretty enough? What did you think about her? This, that, and the other. And then they would tell you like, hey, I really liked their family or I didn't. And they would do a series of family-based dates. And the girl would have to approve of the boy and the boy would have to approve of the girl. If the girl was like, no, I'm not attracted to him, I can't do it, the dad would be like, no problem, get this guy out of here. That was it. But in the West, because none of you have really experienced any of this, you guys have this movie thing that's based off of kings and queens and princes and building dynasties and kingdoms and shit that had nothing to do with it. So the culture was very different women in our community and women in America and the wilderness of North America have rejected male input and the help of men in helping you to select your partner. You hide your relationship from your father because you know he's not going to approve of him, right? You guys sneak around and have sneaky links and side relationships, and you're doing all types of shit you have no business doing. And then when it doesn't work out, you say stupid shit like this. The truth of the matter is a very small percentage of black men are having 90% of these kids who are born out of wedlock. And you ladies pick based off of a vibe and your feelings and whether or not you're attracted and this, that, and the other. And guess what? All of that is a terrible fucking way to choose a husband. And because most of you are, when you're young, the men you're picking are all dog shit, you run up your body count, you run up your traumatic experiences, and then you bring all that drama and stupidity to a man who's willing to marry you when you finally start looking to settle down and stop having random sex. And then you talk about how the men are different, when the truth of the matter is you couldn't go to any culture with your history, your background, your behavior, your domestic skills, right? And present as a wife to an Arab man, an Asian man, an Indian man, or nothing. And there are lots of black men who have traditional values. That's what you're seeing online. You're seeing tons of men say that they want traditional values. And what the women say is you can't afford tradition because you can't afford to retire me. As if the average Arab, Asian, Indian dude is retiring his wife when they marry. That's insane. They aren't retiring. The woman is working. In marriages in this country, 72% of the wives work. Okay, so because you have now gone 2-3 generations where your mama wasn't married and your mama's mama wasn't married or she was divorced, none of you have watched family operate from the inside in terms of nuclear family. So you have all these ideas about how family works that have nothing to do with anything. They're horror stories that you've been handed down by the media, right? With a feminist agenda to tell you that you don't need your men. And then you turn around and make stupid comments like this. Half of the men in the black community are single and childless, okay? And 30% of the remaining guys are married, okay? And now that you're looking on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, you can see that the majority of us at some point in our lives do want to settle down and be married and start a family, and that we want to do that with a traditional frame for that relationship. But that requires a man who is willing to keep the traditional responsibilities and a woman who is willing to who is willing to keep the traditional responsibilities. But most of y'all been out sleeping around and collecting all this trauma, talking about you single, independent, you don't need a man. Most of you have a value system that doesn't match up with any man that would want to make a marital commitment. And then instead of looking at yourself and saying, you know what, I screwed a whole bunch of dudes and it messed me up. Instead of saying, you know what, I had children by a guy who I had no business dealing with in the first place, and now husbands find me unacceptable, y'all say stupid shit like this. The truth of the matter is half of the men have never been married and have no children in your community. And what you guys do with that statistic is you ignore it so that you don't have to admit that you're the piece that doesn't fit, that you're the problem. I go into these panels and I see women all the time who have 1, 2, 3, 4 baby daddies or have children outside of wedlock, multiple children by the same man outside of wedlock, never married them, arguing with husbands and fathers about marriage. It's crazy to me. It makes no sense. If we have a problem in the community of out of wedlock childbirth, okay, and you as a woman have contributed to this, why are you cussing out, arguing, and trying to tell a man that he needs to be accountable and hold men accountable when the man you're talking to has no kids outside of wedlock and has never been married? It's literally the person who is part of the problem, who has contributed to the issue, arguing with men who didn't contribute to the issue about how to fix the problem. You're the problem. You're the problem. You can't argue with guys who have no kids outside of wedlock or were married before and had their children outside of marriage. So, lady, you need to reevaluate this. I know you won't, but you should. Have a good day.